On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we take a break from talking about your current Toronto Raptors and talk about an all-time great. Vince Carter is going into the Hall of Fame, and we've got some feelings about it.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, April the 5th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Very Bad website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, baby. The link is in the description of the podcast. It's free to join, and it's a great place to come hang out with sickos just like you who can't get enough of your 15 game in a row losing Toronto Raptors. It's a lovely place. Come hang out. It's free to join as always. We'd love to see you become part of our listener family over on the Discord. Of course, you can find the show for free on your favorite podcast app of choice by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing, telling a friend, all that good stuff. It supports the show, helps the algorithms, strokes my ego. It's much appreciated when you take part in all of the ways you can support the show, including going to YouTube as well. We're on YouTube. You can go subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the little notification bell, and get a heads up via push notification every single time the show is about to premiere or go live, which is a wonderful thing because you can't simply get enough of this mug. Am I right? Right? All right, let's get to it. On today's show, we are taking a little bit of a break from talking about the current plight of your Toronto Raptors to talk about an all-timer, Vince Carter, who this week was announced he's going into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. Very deserved, very expected, not at all a surprise that he's going in. But, of course, he becomes the first guy who played for the Toronto Raptors who will go into the Hall of Fame as a Toronto Raptor, which is pretty darn cool. He has said that he wants to go in as a Raptor. It's where it all began, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're here to talk about it. And to do so is a man who, he's a great Toronto Raptors historian. You also know him from Mondays on this podcast most weeks. He's doubling up this week because I don't think he wants to talk about the potential loss to the Wizards on Monday's podcast. So Big V, welcome in, buddy. How are you? It's Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet and Raptors in 7, his wonderful Substack newsletter. Are you ready to talk some Vince?
I am. Let's do this.
Yeah, it's nice to not talk about, the guys currently playing on the Toronto Raptors, reminiscing about better times that then led to very dark times. We don't need to really even talk about that part too much today. Maybe we will. We'll see. Either way, your initial reactions to Vince Carter going in. He's going in alongside Chauncey Billups, which, was noted by many. I talked about it on yesterday's show. Kind of a bit of a, that's pretty good for Kyle Lowry's case down the line. We will deal with that when we deal with that. But Vince Carter going to the Hall, any surprises here, any feelings that sort of erupted as the news came down that Vince Carter will be going into the Hall of Fame and will be doing so, hopefully, in a purple front, black backed Toronto Raptors early 2000s road jersey?
Yeah, I mean, happy for him. Happy to see it. I think it's well-deserved, especially once you factor in the longevity. I think that that peak that he had, that Vinsanity stretch, was just one of a kind in terms of its global appeal, in terms of its impact, obviously on Canada. But I think his global impact actually gets underrated because of how much we talk about, the impact on Canada. And I think, we, in this viral world that we live in, those dunks that he was doing back then would have just been everywhere all the time. And, back then it was like people just trying to find it. And, you kind of just go to NBA.com and you see little snippets. You go, you watch, NBA action and wait for the top 10 countdown and you see it. Other than that, obviously sports channels, highlights. But in this era of Instagram and YouTube and whatnot, like, even now, like, you can go on YouTube and you can watch them now, but to actually have the chance to maybe experience that live in real time, and you think about the way he would have been in those Instagram reels and whatnot, just one of a kind impact for me.
Yeah, man. I think you're around the age. I certainly am around the age. He is the guy who is the most responsible for me liking basketball, for me liking the Toronto Raptors, indirectly for me sitting in this podcasting studio right now talking about Vince Carter. It is really like when you're part of the Carter effect, when you are like one of the spawn of all of those dunks and you have grown up your entire life, just kind of, with those very core sports memories. It's a pretty cool thing to kind of see it all come now to full circle where he's going to go into the Hall of Fame. It's always a good excuse whenever Vince is up in the news to go and watch some dunks. There's a lot of them, and you're to your point. There was like an entire week dedicated to the Anthony Edwards dunk conversation after he literally gave a guy a head injury while dunking on him. Extremely cool. I can only imagine what the discourse would have been for the Vince Carter over Frederick Weiss dunk. The sort of half court lob dunk against the Clippers that has always burned into my brain as one of his all timers. It would have been, he would have been a sensation. He would have been TikTok famous, all that good stuff that everyone strives to be these days. And it happened at a time when the franchise was fledgling. The franchise was going through it a little bit until he came around. And he set them up with a pretty fun little run there. Obviously, the way things transpired to the end of his time at the Raptors is a sour note for everybody. But I'm curious, like, we obviously had the burying of the hatchet moment back in 2014-15 when the Grizzlies came through town. The Raptors were good again. Everyone kind of seemed like, okay, you know what? We can forgive Vince now. It's been like 10 seasons. It's fine. We can all move on with our lives. I still think there are subsets of the fan base that will never forgive Vince fully for how things went down. As we get further away from it, how do you view the divorce? Like, are you still like a little chapped about it from the way Vince handled it? Are you more sort of putting it on the front office and the way they handled things by the time it all came down? What's your sort of view now as we get now nearly 20 years away, good God, from the Vince Carter trade?
Yeah, I've made my peace with it. I think I will say that the time was necessary, right?
Yeah.
And I think there was that need to heal. I have very visceral memories of, his first game back in Toronto and the feelings I had about him back then. And, you know, can remember him saying that he doesn't want to dunk anymore and dunking's overrated. And, and so
He
all of
did
that
that.
stuff.
Like, that's a thing that happened. It's a bummer, man.
Yeah. And so all of that, and then you look at the fact that that season when he got traded as a Raptor, he was averaging just about 16 points a game, and then all of a sudden he goes to the Nets and he's back to being Vince and averaging 25 a game, and
He averages 27 and a half over
yeah,
56 games, which would have been his career high for a season.
yeah,
Just
and
sticking it to
so
us.
yeah, so all of that frustration was very real and very valid to have, and I can kind of understand if people still feel a certain way about it. But for me personally, I think the time has healed. We recognize that people make mistakes. Um, and you brought up the front office. You do look at that and say, look, this was just a bad situation getting worse, and um, things were not handled the way they should have been. I mean, you look at hiring Rob Babcock as a GM. He was not qualified to do it. He was hired like a month before the draft, which put him in a horrible position to even draft well.
Just
And
closed
so,
his eyes and said, Hoffa.
and so all those things just created the perfect storm for what we saw transpire. And so that's kind of how I view it now. I think ideally you'd like to think that most people have moved on and recognize that the positives outweigh the negatives, probably by a pretty significant amount. And that's where I kind of land.
Yeah, I think as you get further away, the reach of Vince and his time with the Raptors and the effect of him on Canada basketball, on the Raptors becoming just like a relevant franchise that was cool, that, had a guy who could win all-star voting contests, all that stuff. Like the effect of that to me far outweighs the disappointment of the way it all came to close. I still think it's fair to suggest that maybe he hasn't ever really fully just like come out and said, yeah, I screwed up. That was bad. Like I don't think there's been like a pretty outward apology or acknowledgement of what went down. There's just sort of, yeah, everything kind of went to crap on both sides, which, hey, it did. Like it fully did. But I do think just sort of like, even if he doesn't even mean it, just kind of accepting responsibility for his end of things and the not dunking anymore thing probably would go a long way to sort of getting the last few people who refuse to forgive him back on board. And maybe we get that. Maybe we get that, say, at a jersey retirement ceremony or something like that. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show, but I want to dive into that a little bit more as we continue on our chat here about Vince Carter. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood Retirement. Did you know that if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right, we continue on here talking Vince Carter on your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, doing a bit of a palate cleanse from a week of really nasty losses for your Toronto Raptors, or at least one particularly nasty loss. Either way, Big V, the jersey retirement thing. This is, I think one of the questions du jour this week, and I talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I think there's been this sort of, my kind of stance on it at least has been, I don't think Vince should be the first guy to get his jersey retired by the Raptors as sort of the tax for what happened at the end of his time with the Raptors. I think Kyle Lowry should be the first. However, sometimes things don't work out the way you want to, and sometimes the stars align. Next season, as Vince Carter is going into the Hall of Fame, it is the 30th anniversary of the Toronto Raptors. Is that enough for you to say, you know what, regardless of what happens with Kyle Lowry, who's probably going to keep on playing because that dude loves to hoop, do you think Vince Carter should be the first Toronto Raptor to get his jersey retired? And should it happen next season during the 30th anniversary celebrations?
Yes, yes, and yes. I think for me, I don't view the first jersey retired as a big deal. I think for me, it's just who retired first, and
sure,
and
that's
Vince
fair.
is that guy.
Maybe I just am very, I love semantics. I love persnicketyness. This could just be me being too particular.
Yeah, like I've kind of made the argument before, right? Like I don't think San Antonio fans are up in arms that Bruce Bowen's jersey got retired before Tim Duncan's. You know what I mean? Like
Bruce Bowen's jersey got retired? We gotta stop on that one for a second.
And then I think it got unretired because LaMarcus Aldridge wanted to wear 12.
Sorry, Bruce, you're screwed, bud.
So I don't view that as a huge deal. I think it fits perfectly that it will be the Raptors' 30th anniversary. Vince will be in the Hall of Fame, and now you can see his jersey go up in the rafters. I think that would be a really cool moment for a franchise in a season that probably still won't have a lot of cool moments. I think that'll be a fitting way to kind of ring in the 30th anniversary as well. Maybe that's something you do opening night. Maybe you pick out a special night. Kind of, you could even do it like right before the All-Star break because of, the way he kind of led All-Star voting. You think of the slam dunk contest, all of that. I think that would be kind of cool too. I would be happy to see him have his jersey retired next season. And maybe that is the final thing that kind of gets people over the line
Yeah.
and says, okay, well, this is happening. You either get on board or
Or they just come and throw eggs at the court as
yeah,
they do it if they
or
really
they
are
wear their
feeling some kind of way.
bibs and what else happened in that return game? It was like it went from saying half man, half amazing to half man, half a season. Uh, remember that?
We were
And
really on our petty, weren't we?
there were grown men, wearing bibs.
It'd be funny if Vince turned it around and then wore a bib during his retirement ceremony. It won't happen, but it'd be funny. Just like, yeah, you know what? You got me. You got my ass. Important question. We've seen videos of Vince Carter still able to dunk while wearing a suit, which is insane.
Yeah.
Do they make him do some kind of ceremonial dunk if they retire his jersey? And if not, why? They should do that. That would be great.
You know, it'd be awesome if they hang like the lever to pull off to showcase the jersey, right? And that triggers like lofting it up.
Like a dunk unveils the jersey?
Like he has
That's
to
what you're
jump
saying?
up and grab like a lever,
Oh,
and then
okay,
it
yeah.
just like boom. That's how you see the jersey.
I thought you were doing like the basket becomes like a trick basket where you pull it and it's not actually a basket, it's actually a lever that opens the
Oh, that works too.
That's
That's
fun
even
too.
better.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of
That's
work for the
even
game
better.
ops crew, but get on it. Make secret hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey man, bring T-Mac back. Recreate one of the dunk contest dunks. I'm cool with it. We can't have him recreate the arm in the hoop dunk because I fear that might actually like grievously injure him at his age. But
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
is that your favorite Vince dunk? Do you have a favorite?
The elbow in the rim is up there. Because I remember seeing that and just like not like it broke my brain. I
Yeah,
was
it
just
broke
like,
the entire arena's brain. It was like, what? Just like a soft murmur is the response, which I think is way better than like raucous cheers.
yeah, and that added so much to the night. I mean, just the idea that he stuck his arm in the rim, um, it was just silly. Like you and again, you mentioned the reaction, like everyone just kind of being like, "What just happened?" And then seeing the replay and being like, still kind of being like, "Is a human supposed to be able to do that?" Like, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think some of those memories. I mean, I think what makes Vince the greatest dunker of all time is the fact that he had those dunks in the dunk contest,
Mhm.
and he was still such an incredible in-game dunker, right?
Yes.
Like he was the best of the best at both. And you think of some of his in-game dunks, the one over Mutombo, obviously the New Jersey ones come to mind as well on Alonzo. Um, and so I think that combination just takes him to another level as a dunker.
Yeah. And for someone like me who dunks are like my favorite thing about basketball. It's so cool to have had that guy play for the team. I mean, it's the reason I like dunks so much, I think, is Vince Carter kind of, put me on the shit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think let's
I
get
mean,
to a
people know
listener
who
question.
Frederick Weiss's name is for one
Poor
reason
Frederick
only.
Weiss, man. Brian Windhorst wrote a story on how that dunk kind of ruined him, and it makes me feel a little bad for reveling in the dunk. But also, he jumped over a 7-foot guy in the Olympics. What are you supposed to do except marvel and gasp? Let's get to a
Have
listener
you heard
question.
the Vin Baker story?
The Vin Baker story. No, tell the
Yeah.
Vin Baker story.
So, Vin Baker was in the game, like he was like pretty much in the dunker spot.
Right.
And so when Vince got the ball, he was like demanding the ball.
Right.
And so he talks about how like he didn't really see the dunk
Right.
because once he didn't get the pass, he just started like walking back or like
Yeah. Just pouting, like, find me.
And then obviously Kevin Garnett had that insane reaction.
I'm looking at it
Where
right now. It's outstanding.
it kept like you could not have had a better person to immediately react to that dunk than
Oh yeah,
Kevin
like the
Garnett.
most
Like
emotive, expressive dude ever. Just like,
yeah.
oh, that dunk is insane. It's also insane because it's one of the few times Vince Carter's not bald, which always throws me off as well. It's always
Oh yeah.
a fun little footnote in that one.
Yeah.
Um, we got a couple listener questions to get to. One about the greatest dunker of all time, and that status. We'll get to that. We got a couple more we'll rattle through to close out the show as we crowdsource some Vince Carter conversation. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Amazon Fire TV, which, again, I love because my parents can use it without having to call me for troubleshooting, which is a very important thing when you're a person in your 30s with parents who are approaching their 60s. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick. That's what my parents got, that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournaments, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On. Yes, that's right. Locked On shows are free on Amazon Fire TV. Just more places to find my mug. What a wonderful thing. Also, they've got all the big pro and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all of the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date and all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. To learn more, visit them at amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. You're the kind of driver that likes to push things a little bit further. Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. And gone are the days of connecting your phone. No one likes doing that. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. You want to scale up, though? You can go with the 2024 Nissan Armada, which will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Wrapping it up here with the Vince Carter podcast with our pal Vivek Jacob, the second most important Toronto Raptors related person whose name starts with a V. Big V, let's get to it and get to some listener questions from the folks in the Discord who sent in some Vince Carter related mail. Let's get to this one from Brandon Miller Goat, our favorite member of the Discord, who's just like a Hornets fan who just hangs out and passes along Hornets updates. It's great. We love Brandon Miller Goat. Question is, do you think any active player could usurp VC's role as the greatest dunker of all time? There feels like there's one major candidate who we may have already mentioned on today's podcast, but I do think there's one big differentiator that maybe makes it so he cannot do that. Who you got? Do you have anyone who could maybe take down Vince Carter as the greatest in-game dunker?
I mean, you mentioned his name, obviously, Anthony Edwards. Like, his ability is just incredible. I don't know. He'd be up there in terms of just candidacy and just some of the dunks we've seen over people that he can pull off. It's pretty ridiculous. So he'd be the closest for sure. I think to this point, the best I've seen since Vince is Aaron Gordon. I think his dunking ability, he's had the best dunk contest for me since Vince. And I'd say comfortably. Like, he was robbed twice, once by Dwayne Wade and then once in that contest against Zach LaVine. So to me, he should have the resume. He has the dunks. I think he's absolutely spectacular. He's the closest in terms of dunk quality to Vince that I've seen since Vince. But Anthony Edwards for sure could be up there.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards is the one, right? And I would argue he's maybe a more violent in-game dunker than Vince Carter ever was. Like Vince was like a lot of grace and just like ridiculous leaping ability. Yes, he postered some dudes as well, or jumped over dudes who would have been posters in the case of Vince. Um, but like Anthony Edwards, I mean, the dude injures guys when he dunks. That is like a pretty incredible piece of dunking clout. I do think the fact that he is not like, I guess, was he in a dunk contest? I know he doesn't want to do it anymore. I feel like maybe he was in it early in his career, but again, if we don't remember it, then it probably wasn't all that notable. Anthony Edwards dunk contest. Why do I feel like he's been in one? Either way, it doesn't seem like he's going to ever do it again. And so I just, to me, the greatest dunker has to do it in both contexts. Is that like not a fair sort of bar to have to clear?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you've got to be able to take on the challenge, and I think again, there is just a global appeal that comes with the dunk contest, and people all over the world are paying attention to that.
Mhm.
Um, that's part of the unique appeal of All Star Weekend, and that's kind of why we want to see it be more competitive and all of that. Um, and so I think with the dunk contest, yeah, I do think that's something you have to be willing to take on and kind of be the dunk king. And
Mhm.
uh, Vince has obviously done that as well as anyone. And, I think it adds to the lure of Michael Jordan. Obviously, we still talk about Dominique in a
Mhm.
certain way. And so I think those things do matter when thinking of great dunkers.
Mhm. Yeah, I also think too, I mean, Edwards has the best shot at it because he's going to be a star in the league for a very long time. And I think there's something about one of the best players in the world being also a ridiculous dunker
100%.
that adds to the whole cachet as well. Like, for example, like Jalen Green is a ridiculous dunker. That dude gets hang time like very few, if any, in the NBA. I still am having a hard time wrapping my brain around the and one over Rudy Gobert this week, where he jumps like 6 feet in the air, gets hit, readjusts, and lays it in. When he was trying to take a life on that dunk, for sure. He's insane, but is Jalen Green going to be like a top of the league player for a long time? I mean, he might be. He's still like 21. He's got plenty of time to figure things out and has been awesome down the stretch for Houston. So maybe he reaches that status where sort of star power plus dunking ability puts him in the conversation as well. But Edwards is the guy right now. And yeah, until he does a dunk contest, which he has not done, I looked it up. He has not done it. And he has many times said he's not interested. I do think the crown has to lie with Vince. It's just the way it is. It's it would be damn cool to see Anthony Edwards do it. Aaron
Next
Gordon's an
year,
interesting one too. Yeah.
I was gonna say next year, let's get Anthony Edwards, Jalen Green. I think
Ooh.
an underrated guy is Jalen Johnson.
Uh-huh.
That
Uh-huh.
that dunk that he had jumping over Austin Reeves.
Is nasty. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's get those three in there. Maybe we have
His
Mac
future
McClung come back.
teammate Austin Reeves too. Wow. Disappointing stuff. This is way
So
to
yeah,
make a
let's
first
maybe get
impression.
Mac McClung back for another one or
No,
in the same
no,
way.
no, no. We're not doing that. Mac McClung out. Done. Bye. I was gonna say about Aaron Gordon. He just, to me, he doesn't have the in-game. He's had some in-game dunks, but not the same like just prolific number of them, right? Like it doesn't quite stand out as the in-game dunker that an Edwards or a Vince or even a Jalen Green does. So I think that's what holds him back, despite being an extremely good dunk contest dunker. Let's go to another question here. This one comes from Green Giant JG. As a newer Raptors fan, starting watching in 2017, can you think of 3 Vince games to watch to show his impact? And what would they be? Let's dive into that. He said he's watched the Carter Effect, but that was more about the cultural impact, about how Vince invented clubs and other things. Right? He definitely invented clubs in Toronto, but the 3 games that you'd pick, we can just kind of go back and forth here, maybe to go 2 games each or something like that to get to 4. But where are you going here with the games to sort of highlight Vince Carter's overall impact if people want to go seek him out?
I think for sure it would be, was it game 3, Raptors Sixers,
Game 3
where
Raptors Sixers. I have the box score up in front of me right now.
and he had the 8 threes in the first half or something like that.
Yep.
And yeah, so that's as good as it gets. I mean, I think if you really wanted, you could also. I think there was one where Iverson had 50 and Vince had 40 something.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you throw one of those in there just to like really feel what it was like for both of them to go at it, as opposed to, I think game 3 was a blowout, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
Raptors won easily. So it'd be a toss up between those two. But for sure, there's no doubting that one of the games from that Raptors Sixers series has to be there.
Yeah.
So that would be one.
Game 6, he has 39 points to force game 7. A game I was
Yes.
at. It's burned in my brain. Pretty incredible.
So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with one of those peak games in that series. And then I would go, man, now it gets really interesting. I would probably go with the 51 point night against Phoenix.
Yep.
That was on TNT, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or
so for him,
NBC, whatever had the rights at the
or
time. Yeah.
yeah, NBC maybe. And so for him to go off the way he did, going up against, a Phoenix team that had, I believe, Penny Hardaway, and who am I missing? Was J Kidd on that team?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd
Yeah,
have to
sounds
look it
about
up.
right. J Kidd, Stephon Marbury, one of them at some point was on that team.
Right.
Yeah.
So I will look that up to verify, but I think I would have that game in there. And then I would go with um either, so this is a toss up. I would either go with the road game against the Clippers where Vince hits the buzzer beater, or actually,
Mhm.
you know what? Maybe I'll go with the one in Boston where he hits the buzzer beater.
Right.
Um, if there was a way to just put the two together, because they happened in the span of a week, that was peak Vinsanity, because that was the year of the dunk contest, and he had that stretch. I believe the Raptors won about like 12 of 14 games
Mhm.
to really bolster their playoff positioning. And Vince was just going absolutely off against anyone and everyone. And the thing about um, those two buzzer beaters, like that game was in Boston, and it was like, Celtics fans kind of knew they were watching like the next MJ or something. Like their
Right.
reaction to the buzzer beater was like, "Man, this guy, like, what do we do?" um, and then you go to the Clippers game, and obviously the Clippers being the Clippers, everyone has come to watch Vince, and
Mhm.
he has this ridiculous alley oop that he catches one handed. That is just a stunning like tomahawk jam,
One of the
and
most, like, incredibly graceful athletic displays I think I've ever seen. It might
yeah,
be my favorite in-game Vince dunk, honestly. It's so pretty.
yeah, it's gorgeous. And like so the Clippers commentator is almost frustrated because he literally is like, okay, everyone got what they came to see. We can focus on basketball now. Cause like, because he's probably like, man, like this guy's a visiting player. And then Vince ends up hitting the game winner in that one too.
Yeah.
Um, and
A game where he
so,
only scores 23 points. This is March 8th of 2000, a week on the heels of the game in Boston on March the 1st, where he scores 28 and has the winner.
right. So think about
Yeah.
that, right? Like he has the dunk contest couple weeks before that. Then he's absolutely tearing it up in this stretch here. So this was
Mhm.
peak Vinsanity.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I think you've got to have one of those games in there. And that's my 3.
Yeah, those are good ones. I would also add, like, my personal favorite is the one at home against the Bucks. in January of that year, where he has 47 points. It's like a personal one because I was at that game and I missed the first half, but still saw most of his points in the second half, and it was extremely cool. So that one's kind of burned in my brain. 47 points in 43 minutes. He goes 20 of 32 from the field, does some crazy stuff, big dunks, etc. Taking down Ray Allen. It was a pretty interesting matchup at the time. Nice little fun rivalry between those guys. And the other one, look, man, the return with the Nets. I feel like if you want to get like a sort of grasp on the impact he had and the way he left people feeling, that's probably a pretty good one to do, just for the history of it all, where he comes back his first game in Toronto with the Nets. He goes for 39 points. He hits the game winner, or what how did that go down again? Or he hit another game winner the next season, I think, actually, in Toronto. I think that's how
No,
it
no.
goes.
So,
His
so the
game
first
back,
game,
yeah.
so the first game back is the one where he struggles in the first half. Mo Pete
Right.
is defending him.
Right.
Then Mo Pete and Vince joke around, and Vince slaps him
Yes.
playfully, and then Mo
Mo
Pete
Pete gets the
playfully
boot.
slaps him back and gets ejected.
Yes.
And that is kind of, the turning point of that game. And then Vince completely goes off in the second half. So right at the end of that game, Jose Calderon is at the line and he misses the second free throw, which keeps it a 2-point game. Jason Kidd grabs the rebound, as he does, races down the floor, kicks it back to Vince, who's trailing, and Vince drains a three from about 30 feet.
Yeah.
And just, yeah.
So that one is in the
I
05,
just sank.
06 season. Yeah.
My entire body just sank in that moment.
Yeah. He finished with 42 points in that game. That's the first game back in 06, or 05, 06. And the previous one, he scores 39 in like the last week of the 04, 05 season, as the Raptors are lifelessly limping towards the finish in that season. Both of those pretty good examples of how incredible Vince Carter was, just from the wrong end of it. But again, as a piece of history, worth checking out.
Yeah.
We got to jump, though. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining the show, Big V. Always lovely to have you, doubling up on the week. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff, Sportsnet, and I'll have the next Substack out soon. I might just go in on Vince stuff. So
Do it.
seems like a timely thing to do. So we'll get into that. And besides that, you can follow all of it on Twitter at Vivek Jacob.
Everyone, go and do that. Always appreciated having you on the show here, buddy. Anyone who wants to go and support the show, do it by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing on your favorite podcast apps. We're on YouTube as well. Go subscribe there. We'll be back again on Monday, hopefully talking about a team that has won a basketball game by Monday. If not, we're talking about an all-time bad losing streak for the franchise. So one way or another, Monday is appointment listening, baby. So we'll see you then. Enjoy the Bucks game tonight, the Wizards game on Sunday. Please just win. Please. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you Monday. Bye-bye. Oh, that was terrible.